haul ass, just haul ass.
States of emergency in parts of Nova Scotia on this Monday night. The out-of-control flames threatening homes.
It is a wind-driven fire.
And the support being offered to evacuees. The battle for Alberta on this election day, the surge of voters at the ballot box.
There's a very strong get-out-the-vote machine going on.
And the group claiming to control Danielle Smith.
We are living in an anti-human society.
New claims the Chinese government is targeting another MP.
CSIS had reached out to me.
What the NDP is now pushing for.
Global National with Dawna Friesen. Reporting tonight from Edmonton.
Good evening from Alberta's capital as voters here choose their next premier in a closely watched election. It will all be decided tonight. The United Conservative Party is looking to win a second consecutive majority. The NDP is fighting to repeat its triumph of 2015, the only time it's won in Alberta. A record number of people cast their ballots in advance polls, many more casting their votes today. If the opinion polls and the analysts are right, it will be a tight race. Heather Yourex-West explains the anxiety is high.
Election day in Alberta, but amongst voters here in battleground Calgary, there's a sense that things are very different this time around.
I think it's going to be a tight race, and I work in the social services, so it matters. I think it really matters today what happens.
So I think you have to exercise the right, whether you necessarily agree with either party.
This is a riding that could help decide the province's next premier. The people here very aware that across Alberta, all eyes are on them.
It's going to depend on Calgary, a couple of ridings there, as to which way it goes. And it's a toss-up, who knows?
I know it'll be close, and I think every vote counts.
Albertans are very engaged in this election. It's a very tight election. There's a very strong get-out-the-vote machine going on in both the UCP and the NDP.
More than a quarter of registered voters have already cast their ballots ahead of voting day, a record turnout for the province's advanced polls. This political scientist believes a higher voter turnout could be trouble for the UCP.
If you have record high turnouts in this election, my hypothesis would be that it would be folks who are more likely to vote for the NDP because UCP voters tend to be more reliable or consistent in their voting intentions.
With many ridings polling so closely, the wait for results could stretch late into Monday night.
I will stay up till the results are in. Yeah. I know it will be the right one.
And as they say in politics, the voters are never wrong, though of course that perspective depends on which side you're on.
Heather Yourex-West is at NDP election night headquarters in Edmonton. Heather, it's still early. What's the mood like there?
Yeah, what I'm hearing over and over from the NDP camp is that people are hopeful, but they are also nervous. This has been such a long campaign. Of course, the writ dropped May 1st, but this election race has been going on for months since arguably Danielle Smith was first elected as leader back in October. We know that Rachel Notley herself started the day with a run, as she is known to do, and she plans to gather with her family to watch the early results come in. It could, however, be a pretty long night before we know all of those results. This is, of course, Rachel Notley's third Alberta election as leader, and many believe that if she is not successful tonight, it could be her last. So she does have a pretty high mountain to climb if she wants to be successful at reclaiming that job that she lost 4 years ago to Jason Kenney. The NDP will need to flip 21 seats. A difficult task for sure, but one that many believe is possible. It will all come down to those key battleground states in Calgary, and for now, Dawna, we'll just have to wait and see.
All right, Heather Yourex-West at NDP headquarters in Edmonton, thanks. UCP leader Danielle Smith is being tested in her first election as the new leader of that party, and is someone who some moderate conservatives are less than enthusiastic about. Mercedes Stevenson is at the UCP election night headquarters in Calgary. Mercedes, what kind of campaign did Smith run?
Well, this was really a campaign by Danielle Smith saying, choose what you know, insisting that she is what's best for Alberta. She'll stand up for Albertans, she says, emphasizing her economic record and try to capitalize on some of that uncertainty around the NDP and going after the NDP's record. It was also a case of Danielle Smith being seen less and less on the campaign trail at big events as it went on. I spoke to some senior folks on the campaign who told me they really thought support changed and shifted for them when the debate happened. And that's because she didn't re-articulate some of those very controversial statements. She stuck to careful things that they know resonate with voters, and then they didn't have her out very much, and they really felt that helped. They also tell me that they had a very strong ground game. They brought people in from not only around the province, but around the country to make sure they get out the vote. Lots of door knocking, and they are relatively confident, Dawna, that they think that they could win tonight, although they say, they are aware anything could happen. They think the path to victory is too narrow for the NDP. They think that the advanced polls showed them that they had substantially more turnout for UCP voters than they were expecting. And they say door to door, while some candidates told us that they were hearing that people didn't want to vote for Danielle Smith, something we've heard on this newscast too, they were concerned about her, that people were willing to vote for the party. And that even in some cases there was NDP signs on the lawn, but they claimed some of those voters would sort of shyly whisper to them that they were prepared to vote for Smith, but they weren't going to say that in public. They're relying on those votes to believe that they can win tonight, and that those disaffected Conservatives won't just stay home, despite some of the very senior Conservatives in this province saying that they feel that way, or perhaps even willing to vote for the NDP.
Mercedes, if we zoom out from Alberta, could the outcome of this election possibly be a gauge of how the Conservatives do federally? Will they be watching closely?
Absolutely, the Conservatives will be watching closely, hoping that this is a good omen for them. Keeping in mind, of course, Alberta is very much its own unique political beast. It's not a duplicate of Ontario or any other province. But there's a risk here for the Conservatives, too. Pierre Poilievre endorsed Danielle Smith, and if she continues to say controversial things, those will be used by Liberals in attack ads against him in the coming federal election, which could be 2025, but it also could be a lot sooner than that.
All right, Mercedes Stevenson at the UCP headquarters in Calgary. Thanks. Well, the political futures of both Notley and Smith are on the line tonight. Notley has been leader of the Alberta NDP since 2014, including 4 years as premier. Smith became leader of the UCP in October of 2022 after Jason Kenney quit. She took over as premier then, with one group solidly behind her. It's called Take Back Alberta.
No longer will Alberta ask permission from Ottawa to be prosperous and free.
It's Danielle Smith making bold promises as the new leader of Alberta's United Conservative Party, but it's this man who takes credit not only for getting her there,
we're going to take over the United Conservative Party of Alberta,
but for ousting Jason Kenney.
He founded, according to him, the United Conservative Party of Alberta, and we booted him out.
David Parker is the founder of Take Back Alberta. Take it back from the so-called ruling elite, which it accuses of censoring those who speak out and restricting freedom. Political scientist Wayne Bratt has been tracking their rise.
He was able to mobilize, 35,000 people, which isn't a lot, but was enough to shape the leadership review. Then he swung those same people that he got to sign up for party membership to support Danielle Smith in her campaign.
Parker harnessed anger about the vaccine mandates and pandemic restrictions and has gone further.
We are living in an anti-human society that literally teaches our children that they are a disease on this planet. That the best thing we can do is depopulate. You are the carbon they are trying to reduce.
He now claims to control Smith through people in her office.
He was standing in the room when she was negotiating the health accord with Justin Trudeau.
We asked Take Back Alberta for an interview. They declined. Smith herself has a reputation for saying what's on her mind.
The community that faced the most restrictions on their freedoms in the last year were those who made a choice not to be vaccinated. So they have been the most discriminated against group that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime.
Maybe we get a cross-border agreement with Ron DeSantis. Maybe he has a little zone in Florida that we would be able to fly direct to.
All of it is deeply worrying for lifelong Conservatives like Lee Richardson, who told me he's voting NDP for the first time.
Just outrageous statements, no basis in science, but
kind of populist views on matters, simplistic answers to complex questions.
How many other Conservatives do you think share your views on this?
You know what? I think a lot of them do. I think probably the majority do, but they're not prepared to go as far as voting for the NDP.
Take Back Alberta avoids the so-called mainstream media, but Brad says he's heard audio tape from some of their meetings.
Another Take Back Alberta said, you know, if the NDP win, it's because they stole it. We'll have to get our guns and hunt them down.
We don't know what's coming next. And I think that's concerning to people in Alberta, but also across the rest of the country. Who are we dealing with here?
You can follow live coverage of the election results. It starts at 8 Mountain, 10 Eastern on Global News in Alberta, online at globalnews.ca, and on all of our streaming platforms. There's a major police operation underway in Calgary after 2 people were killed in a shooting that involved the police. One of the main routes into downtown has been closed most of the day as officers investigate. Police say they received multiple reports of a large cube van driving erratically at around 10 this morning. Officers pursued it. Barricades were put up to stop it from accessing the downtown. Investigators have confirmed 1 officer fired shots and 2 people are dead. The Alberta Serious Incident Response Team has taken over the investigation. In Ontario, a tragic crash has killed a police officer and a school bus driver near the city of Woodstock. Police say the collision between the unmarked police vehicle and the school bus happened just before 7 this morning. No children were on board the bus. 35-year-old Detective Constable Stephen Tourango was killed. Police say they're not releasing the name of the bus driver out of respect for the family's privacy. In Nova Scotia, thousands of people have been displaced because of 2 wildfires, one of them just half an hour's drive from downtown Halifax. This driver captured what it was like as he drove to escape the fast-moving fire in Hammonds Plains. Thick smoke and embers surrounding the vehicle, the wildfire raging on both sides of the highway. One of the largest fires is burning in Shelburne County in southern Nova Scotia. It's scorched thousands of hectares and more than 400 homes have been evacuated. The second in Tantallon near Halifax has already destroyed houses. At least 10 homes are known to have burned, and there are reports that number could be much higher.
We could see the smoke just on the other side of the trees and realized, yeah, that's moving quick. So we packed up, we grabbed a few things, and we left.
We were able to save somebody's house after seeing so much destruction.
Gusting winds and very dry conditions are making the situation worse. Callum Smith on the fires and the race to contain them.
Crews fighting from the air and the ground as they battle the Tantallon fire.
Go. The fire in Tantallon is still estimated about 788 hectares. The one kind of good news story that we're hearing so far from officials at the site, as the mayor indicated, there's been minimal growth.
No injuries have been reported, but more than 16,000 people have been forced from their homes as of Monday afternoon.
It is a wind-driven fire. Our fire service, along with the Department of Natural Resources, is working exceptionally hard against challenging conditions, and we owe them a great debt of gratitude. Together, they have protected schools, seniors' facilities, and scores of homes.
The fire started Sunday afternoon. The danger so imminent, evacuations began almost immediately. The Nova Scotia government offering $500 to any of those evacuees, while Ottawa vows support too.
The federal government will be there to support in any ways we can as people are dealing with some pretty terrifying situations.
Officials say they believe the fire is human-caused, given we haven't had any lightning. With more dry weather conditions forecast, a province-wide burn ban is now in effect.
Trying to decide which building you have the best shot of saving and which buildings perhaps you can't save or you thought you could save, but the fire conditions were such that you had to pull your people away for their safety.
Callum Smith, Global News, Upper Tantallon, Nova Scotia.
Uganda's new anti-gay law coming up. The punishment members of the gay community could now face. Plus, the brutal assault in Ukraine that sent children running for their lives. This is the Saddle Dome in Calgary, the city that's a key battleground in tonight's election. We're back from Edmonton in a moment. Children running for shelter in Kyiv as Russia launched a daytime missile attack hours after its usual overnight bombardments. Ukrainian military officials say all the missiles were shot down and one person was injured by debris. The attacks come on Kyiv Day, the anniversary marking that city's founding. There is international condemnation of lawmakers in Uganda after that country approved one of the harshest anti-gay laws in the world. The country's president signed the so-called Anti-Homosexuality Act. Same-sex relations were already illegal in Uganda. Under this new law, the penalty if convicted is prison or even the death penalty for those who are HIV positive. In a statement, the U.S. President Joe Biden called the act shameful and says his administration will reevaluate American ties and aid to Uganda. A joint statement by international AIDS relief groups, including the UN, also says Uganda's progress on fighting HIV is now in grave jeopardy. A Canadian man has been extradited to Thailand in connection with the killing of a gang member in Phuket. An Alberta court approved the extradition of 38-year-old Matthew Dupre last December. He's wanted for the murder of Jimmy Sandhu, who was shot in February of last year. Sandhu was born in India and raised in Abbotsford, BC, where he joined the United Nations gang and was deported to India in 2016 for what Indian police call serious criminality. Public inquiry pressure ahead. Another MP says she's been targeted by Beijing. You're looking at the Walterdale Bridge in Edmonton. We're back from the University of Alberta in a moment. In Ottawa, MPs return to the House today, and calls are growing for a full public inquiry into foreign election interference and for David Johnston to step down as the so-called special rapporteur. The former Governor General determined a public inquiry is not needed because he says it couldn't be a full public inquiry. Now another MP says she was also targeted by Beijing. Turia Isri reports.
The list of MPs briefed by Canada's spy agency is growing. CSIS has informed Conservatives Michael Chong, Aaron O'Toole, and now New Democrat Jenny Kwan that they have all been singled out by the Chinese Communist Party.
CSIS had reached out to me.
Kwan says she can't go into details about how China is targeting her, only why.
The reason why I'm being targeted is because of my activism in support and to fight for basic human rights.
Opposition parties returned to the House and repeated their calls for a public inquiry, something former Governor General David Johnston ruled out last week.
The Prime Minister appointed a family friend and Trudeau Foundation member to investigate, more like cover up.
The Conservatives can continue to malign Mr. Johnston despite the fact that he has distinguished public service, which was recognized by a former Conservative Prime Minister in Stephen Harper.
Johnston plans to hold public hearings into foreign election interference. But the New Democrats and Conservatives agree it's time for him to go. The NDP has introduced a motion calling for Johnston to step aside as special rapporteur. Turia Isri, Global News, Ottawa.
Political diversity next. How tonight's election could defy Alberta's history of predictable votes. You're looking at the Peace Bridge over Calgary's Bow River. We're back in a moment. Welcome back to Edmonton on this provincial election day. Elections in Alberta don't always attract so much interest. For decades, this province voted overwhelmingly Conservative, and there wasn't much variation at the top. From 1971 to 2006, Alberta had just 3 premiers, always Conservative, always men, always predictable. In the last 12 years, there have been 7 premiers, nearly half of them women, one of them left-leaning. And as Eric Sorensen reports tonight, anything could happen.
Alberta is changing, the people and its politics. An urban-rural divide represented by 2 leaders who couldn't be more different and want you to know it. Danielle Smith.
We can choose to go backward with the NDP.
And Rachel Notley.
She can't be trusted to fix our health care.
There's never been a 2-way race in Alberta this close and so bitterly divided.
It really will tell us a battle of what I call the 2 Albertas and which one is going to come forward.
There was a time when elections in Alberta were the most boring and predictable in the country. One Conservative leader after another. and always men who won again and again.
Welcome to Ralph's world.
But times began to change. Ed Stelmach lasted just one term. A decade ago, Alison Redford became the first woman to lead Alberta as Premier. But Conservative Party unity was unraveling, opposed by the Wild Rose Party, led by Danielle Smith. The divisions soon helped Rachel Notley and the NDP score the most surprising upset in the history of Alberta politics.
I solemnly affirm.
Conservatives reorganized under Jason Kenney.
The silent majority has spoken.
But it didn't last, and now Danielle Smith leads a disunited party in a province that's evolving.
We have a lot more diversity, particularly in the urban centres, than historically might have been the case.
Notley will almost certainly win the urban vote in Edmonton and much of Calgary, but Smith and the Conservatives' grip on rural Alberta could tip the balance, a small margin that could take Alberta down starkly different paths within Canada.
Alberta needs stable, predictable, capable leadership.
As Premier, Notley clashed with but also worked with Ottawa. Smith is likely to confront and test Ottawa's jurisdiction in Alberta.
This legislation will ensure no government can increase your personal taxes.
I think there'll be a lot less drama under Rachel Notley.
But only if Alberta, still mostly Conservative, has changed just enough.
For those who are really strongly Conservative, it's maybe too far a walk to go all the way over to the NDP, but for others, it's good governance that they're focusing on and not ideology.
Whether Danielle Smith's Conservatives are re-elected or Rachel Notley's New Democrats win for the second time in 3 elections, Alberta is no longer so predictable and its elections no longer boring. Eric Sorensen, Global News.
And that is Global National for this Monday from Edmonton. I'm Dawna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is the Alberta Legislature, where, depending on tonight's results, either Danielle Smith or Rachel Notley will occupy the Premier's office. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.